Thank you for joining us for another episode of Thank You for You,
where every story matters.
I think by the time I was ready to move to Houston 2 years ago, I was just at this place in my life where I had been in corporate America for a long time, and I was always teetering on, some side project or something, right? I had a blog, I was writing for a magazine. There's lots of side things that I did that fed my passion, right? Because, we live in a real world. You have to do things that pay your bills. And then I always believe that you should always do things that pay your heart, right? So I was really good about balancing those two things. And when I came to Houston, I was able to set it up so I didn't have to go to work outside of my home full time. And it gave me a lot of flexibility to be able to explore what I wanted to do outside of working in corporate America. So I had the freedom. Houston is a lot less expensive than DC, so I could live on a little bit, a lot less. And I had set up a really good stream of income for myself based on what I needed. Came here. My wife also was able to get a really decent job. So it just kind of came together where I had this free time. And so for the first time, I was really able to sit down, have real heart-to-heart conversations with myself about what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I decided that in this place, I felt like it was time and that I needed to kind of put one foot in front of the other and make things happen. And so that is how I finally settled down and decided to take a whole nother path in my life. Does that answer your question? I feel like I rambled.
No, absolutely. Was it scary for you though? Because going from something that you're sure about, like corporate America, this certain amount of time, you're going to get a check. And I know you said that you kind of calculated it because it costs less to live in Houston and you had a stream of income already set up, but shifting into something that's so completely different. Was that scary or?
Yes and no, right? So, yes, in that I knew I was going in a completely different direction than the work that I had done most of my life. And no, because the work that I had done most of my life, a big portion of that was positions where I worked on commission only. So I had always been in that entrepreneurial type of environment, whether I worked for a company or not. So I was always in sales jobs that, would not pay a base salary. And if I wanted to eat and I wanted to pay my rent, I had to really, work hard to close my business and close deals. Mm-hmm. And so I'd always had that hustle spirit in me. So I wasn't scared of the money part. But it was a little bit scary to go, okay, I'm ready to go in a whole different direction. And what does that mean for me? And what type of personal transformation will I need to have in order to make that happen? That was the scary part.
Yeah. So what kind of transformation did that require? Or did you go into it thinking about the kind of shift that you'd have to make, or once you got into it, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to shift my mind and really change how I'm approaching what I'm doing?
I think a little bit of both. I think that going into it, I was basically going, I probably are going to need to change some things around the way I think about things, the way I think about life. But it wasn't until I really got into school, till I really got into the path that I'm in now, that I realized that you cannot hold space for people, for them to heal themselves if you haven't done the work yourself. And so it really required me to face my own demons, my own shadows, my own anger, my own feelings of inadequacy. It really made me look at those things and work to try to resolve them within myself.
Ooh. Well, let's talk about what you before we get into that, because that's juicy and I like it. But like, whoa. But so what did you decided that you wanted to go back to school in order to like start this new path for yourself.
I did.
What did you decide to take on, and how did you come to the decision, and what did you decide?
Yeah. So I have been toying for a couple of years before I moved here, I've been toying with going back to school and really trying to figure out what that looked like for me. I really had a heart-to-heart conversation with myself about who I was, what my attention span was, how I felt like I could be in like a traditional school setting. And I just decided that it wasn't for me. I mean, I am easily distracted by shiny things. I have a hard time.
That Pisces.
Oh my God. Seriously, that's really what it is. I'm constantly in the clouds. It is an effort to pull myself down and ground myself to the point where I can pursue a professional degree in what I thought I needed to do. So then I started looking at, okay, so what else can I do that feeds me in who I am, lets me express who I am, still allows me to help people and allows me to be in the field that I really wanted to be in. And I really wanted to be in the mental health field. And so I always thought that my only option was to go back to school to become a psychologist or an LPC or, a marriage family therapist or any of those variations of what you can do with a psychology degree. But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to take 4 years to go do that. So I did some research and I was looking at more of like allied professions and what type of profession can support mental health professionals and also feel good at the same time. And what can I do with a relatively reasonable amount of training? And so I found a school here in Houston called the Path Foundation, and I went to school to be a certified clinical hypnotist. Yep.
That sounds amazing. Intense and serious. Like certified clinical hypnotist. Like so much goes through my mind. But what does that mean?
So a clinical hypnotist. So here's what I found, right? So I've got probably like 12 different certifications for all different types of hypnosis that I learned. The main one is an advanced certified clinical hypnotist. And I choose the title clinical hypnotist because so often when I tell someone that I'm just a hypnotist, the question that I get is, oh, are you a stage hypnotist? Or they start telling me stories about the show that they saw in college or in Vegas. And while stage hypnotism is a very respected craft, and it is the reason that clinical hypnosis actually exists to this day, there's a very big difference because stage hypnosis is about entertainment and clinical hypnosis is about healing. And it's about working with mental health professionals to help our clients do some of the deeper work that requires some rewiring of the subconscious. And so I make that distinction so that people generally know that I work in a clinical setting versus an entertainment setting.
So I think they don't think it's just some fake.
Like I'm not making people cluck like chickens. Not that that's not funny and
right.
and has value, because it does. But I promise I don't make people cluck like chickens or put them in the sunken place or, do any of those things that mass media tells us about hypnosis.
Right. But really quickly with stage hypnosis,
mm-hmm.
Is it the same practice or is it all for show? Are they still tapping into that for people?
Yeah, they are. So in my training, I took a stage hypnosis class. So I understand the dynamics of like rapid inductions, which is how, if you've ever seen somebody go on, they've got like their line of people and they clap or they snap and they're like, sleep now, right? There's a system and a rhythm to that. There's actually it's a method. So I know how to do all of that. And it uses real hypnotic technique. And the thing that I think that most people need to understand about hypnosis is that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis, right? So all hypnosis is self-hypnosis, which means that you really are the one doing the work and you really are the one doing consenting to work in tandem with a guide, which is the hypnotist. So we don't do the work. We guide you through the work and through consent and a systematic process that helps you reach your goals. So people on stage, when they get up on stage, the mere act of going on stage, the mere act of participating is consent. And so when they consent, they then start to consent even further as they participate in the show. And you'll see, if you ever notice, or next time you see a stage hypnosis show, there will be some people who go in right away, and there'll be some people who are a little bit more resistant. And so the hypnotist will focus on the people who are more open to more suggestion, right? Who are going along with it, who are entertained with the whole thing that's happening, like they're a part of it. And you'll see the healer interact with those people better because their consent is deeper versus somebody who's sitting on stage going, I don't know if I believe all this. I don't know. They're not consenting. And a hypnotist that has any moral character, that has any ethics, is not going to lead that person into anything that they're not consenting to do. So like that whole, let's take the movie Get Out for a second, right? So the whole teacup, remember, if you've seen it, there's this whole episode, or have you guys seen it?
I haven't. Have you?
You haven't. Have you seen it, Chris?
I mean, I watched it, but I didn't watch it, if that makes sense. So
okay. So the main...
Let's just say no.
Just say no. Okay. So some of your listeners may know what I'm talking about, but there is a scene where the hypnotist is sitting across from the character. I can't remember his name, but she uses a teacup and a spoon, right? So the teacup and the spoon being stirred in a very slow motion. That's an actual variation of an hypnotic induction called Tire the Senses. And so the goal of that is to get you to watch it so much that you become entranced with the motion, and then you can be easily put into trance. It doesn't mean that you're out of control. It just means that you're in a very focused state of concentration. That's really what hypnosis is. It's a focused state of concentration that, when used in a clinical setting, allows you to do deep inner work. In that instance, in the movie, my point is that she was using a very real technique, but the way she used it with the other person was very Hollywood. It doesn't happen like that.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
So why? Because he didn't consent.
And it wouldn't happen that easy, really.
It wouldn't happen that easy. I can't walk up to you and twirl a teacup and go drop or sink and you go. Like it's just not how it works unless you can see that happening.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you say that you just act as a guide to a person tapping into their self, because I know with coaching, it's the same thing. Like we're doing nothing but guiding you to the answers for yourself, but you're doing the work. So that's pretty cool. So when you were looking for something in that field, how did you land on hypnosis specifically? Did other stuff pop up that were like, maybe?
There were things that I could do. Like there's, I'm sorry, I'm going to start the answer over again. Take some water.
Take your time, player.
I know, I'm still battling a little cold. So there was lots of things that I could do. Like I could learn Reiki. I could learn, I don't know, crystal healing. Like I could learn all kinds of stuff, right? But I've always been fascinated with the brain. I've been fascinated with the way that the brain works, and seeing, reading about and actually having my own personal experience about what hypnosis can actually do to help you work through issues. I realized that it's such a powerful tool. And I think once I experienced it, once I knew what it was, I was hooked, and I just knew that this was what I wanted to do. And it's such a natural, right? Because I have a naturally hypnotic voice, although it probably doesn't sound like it right now, but I do.
Let me find out you're putting us in a trance.
No, not. No, that's funny. It just, you know what it is? It felt natural to me. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I went through the 12 months of training. I spent time in it. I had like over 300 hours of clinical experience. And by the time I graduated, I was a full-blown clinical hypnotist with lots of experience behind me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And in that time also, I did eventually go back to earn a degree. I went and enrolled in a metaphysical spiritual training program or school. So I'm also a student with the University of Sedona, and I went through and finished my bachelor's degree in metaphysical science, and I'm currently working on finishing a master's in metaphysical science and writing a thesis that I need to really focus on, because why? I like shiny things, and it's really difficult to focus right now.
like, in order for me to be distracted by shiny things, I need to get those shiny things.
Yeah.
So.
But it was self-paced, and it made sense to me, and it resonated with my heart. And I've always believed in metaphysical principles, and being able to manifest and being able to create the world and the energy that you live in. And it just felt like that was the right thing to do. So I did eventually go back to school, but I did it my way.
Which is the best way to do it.
The best way, of course.
Yeah, not like straight out of high school feeling like you're forced to choose a degree that you don't care about, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. So while you were doing the hypnosis studies, you decided to go back for the metaphysical degree, or afterwards? Oh, okay.
All at the same time. Yeah.
Okay. At the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
At the same time.
So during that process, you mentioned before, you're like, that in order to help other people, you have to heal yourself and get yourself into a space where, you can hold space for other people. Mm-hmm. So was that going on while you were becoming a clinical hypnosis?
A clinical hypnotist?
Or before? Yeah, hypnotist.
It was all at the same time, because part of becoming a hypnotist is theory, and it's also practice. And so who else do you practice on but yourself and your classmates? And so I would have sessions with my classmates, and they would have sessions with me. So we would get to pick things that we wanted to work on, and we would work through them. I think the first breakthrough that I had two significant breakthroughs. One was, I remember, like, after the election, we had moved here right before the election happened. I started school that next January. So right before the inauguration, right, is when I started school. And I remember starting, and I was so angry, and it was like this collective rage that I felt, and I couldn't shake it. And I'm already like a political person. I love politics and pretty wonky. I follow it. I love elections. Like, I think in another life I might have been in politics. But who knows? Maybe I need to do a past life regression to figure out where was I in politics and what life.
Why is this so serious for you?
Oh, for real.
You and Whitney both. Whitney's into politics like that too.
Oh, I am. And so I felt this collective rage, and there was a lot of fear, right? And that fear turned into anger. And that was one of the first things that we worked on. And I think that my hypnosis teacher, he knew it, not just me, but I think, he's a pretty conscious person himself. And he felt like, let's start this class off with doing some hypnosis around releasing anger and rage. And it was immediate. And it wasn't like after I had that session that I didn't have the ability to be angry, but it didn't resonate and fill me up in the way that it did. It's like I could observe my anger from a distance and look at it in a way that allowed me to evaluate it, figure out where it came from, and figure out what to do with it instead of just sitting in it. And so I think that's what hypnosis does a lot of times, is it just allows you to separate yourself from it a little bit. Aside from,
you mean like,
doing some like rewiring in your brain, and we can talk about that a little bit later, but it helps you put things in perspective, so you're not living in that emotion of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
So it's like, I'm trying to put it together in my brain, which is why I'm
So it
so it's
helps
like,
you kind of be like, oh,
go ahead,
it
I'm
helps
thinking
you
it
kind of
through.
be like more aware of it when it's coming up, and helps you like immediately be like, okay, calm down. You know, you're just like, you haven't ate lunch, or you know what I mean, or like, do you really need to be that mad at her? She's having a hard day, kind of like that, or.
So it does a couple of things. So number one, I practice a technique called cellular releasing and cellular command. And so in cellular releasing, it's a process that I walk a client through where we release every single possible reason you have for that issue. And so we did a cellular release around every single possible reason that we could be angry. So some of the questions are, is your anger tied to an idea that you had from childhood? Do you have anger to harm yourself, to harm others, to sabotage yourself? Do you have anger and it's just this whole list of things, right? And so we're going through this list and I'm answering questions while I'm in hypnosis. And the goal of that is to release whatever the seed event is or whatever it is that's tying me to that emotion so that I can look at the situation without the emotion. And when you're able to look at a situation without the emotion, you can interpret it differently. And so that's a lot of what hypnosis does in releasing is it allows you to release the seed cause or the main reason that you became angry. And so if you release the main reason that you became angry, then down the line, what am I trying to say? You release the main reason that you're angry, right? The seed event, the root cause, then everything else is workable because that root cause is no longer there. So you're able to see the reason that you became angry and have you can reason with it. You can understand it and you can be disconnected from the emotion of it so that you can work through it and let it go.
That makes complete sense. It's kind of like shadow work, except doing the shadow work and going back to the root cause and stuff. When you do it awake and conscious, you do still have the emotion tied to it. Yeah. Which, adds an extra layer of work to do. Mm-hmm. And then when I do it, I do a reprogramming instead of like a release, because I think pretending that it didn't happen is not as healthy. But so I think I get it. It's like it gives you a way to address that without the component of that emotional roadblock that might be there, which is why a lot of people can't see it in the first place, because those emotions are blocking like where this really came from.
Exactly. And to kind of compare it to what you said, the thing about shadow work is, like you said, you do have to sit with the emotion and you also have to understand like the root of it, right? So you have to kind of go into figure out where it comes from. In hypnosis, because we're working with the subconscious while you're in trance, if you think about it, your subconscious knows everything you've ever seen, done, heard, smelled, felt, everything, right? But you may not know that consciously. So if I'm working with you in trance and I'm working with your subconscious, and you and me and your subconscious have set up a way to communicate through what's called idiomotor responses. So basically lift one finger if the answer is yes, lift one finger if the answer is no, right? So I go down my list.
What is that called? I'm about to take some notes.
Right? Yeah, it's called an idiomotor, IDIO motor response.
So you're going to access my idiot motor and then
your idiot motor.
Okay.
You're so funny.
Got you. Mm-hmm.
But the good thing is that because I'm working with your subconscious, you don't have to consciously know what it is, and I don't have to know about it at all. What you're going to tell me is based on my questions, whether or not your subconscious is ready to release that. And if it's ready to release it, then we have some other verbiage where we command it to be released. And then once it's all released, right? So now you've got this empty vessel where you've let go of all that stuff. Consciously, you don't necessarily have to know what it is, but part of the verbiage in that session is if you need to know consciously, then your subconscious mind will allow your conscious mind to know in a loving way so that you can work through it in a way that's healthy for you. So we're already setting up prompts and cues and directions, post-hypnotic suggestions, basically, for the ways that your conscious mind and subconscious mind need to work to deal with this in your real life, like your everyday life, right? So you'll find that you'll have a new way or a new connection. For me, it was my anger. I could see it from a different perspective. So once we do that, then we do positive scripting, where we're basically taking whatever issue we've now, gotten rid of, and we're going to fill that empty vessel where you released all of that with all this positive scripting that is going to start to rewire the neural pathways in your brain around that issue. And so this can only be done in trance. It can only be done subconsciously. And so we do that positive scripting, and then we come out of it and we wake you up. So, it's getting rid of all the seed reasons, the main reasons that you feel this way that maybe you don't even know about. I mean, maybe I was angry from something that happened years ago that I can't even remember. And what was going on in the election was triggering for me, and I couldn't figure it out. Like, why am I so full of rage? And it wasn't just anger, it was rage.
Really?
It was. And it wasn't like that normal, oh my God, this country has never been like this. I know exactly who America is. It wasn't that kind of thing. It was,
I know that girl.
I know, yeah. I know who America is. It was, I think my anger was tied to, and this is me processing afterwards, but I think it just, I just felt unsafe. And I think that, Donald Trump represented like that species of man that had harmed me in my life. And it just triggered so many things that it just put me in this space of rage, and I couldn't get out of it. But hypnosis, immediately, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I can deal with this now. And I've been in that place ever since. Doesn't mean I don't have emotion or that I don't get angry, but I don't feel that rage. And I don't.
Right. It doesn't go to that level.
It doesn't go to that level, and I don't live with it in me.
Now, when they wake you up after trance, do you remember the things that you said or that you raised your hand to? Do you have any memory of it?
Most of the time. The thing about trance is that it can happen in a few different ways. Some people are just super relaxed, right? And they are able to just kind of let their mind wander, and they interact through the ideomotor responses. Sometimes they'll do that, and then maybe they'll drift off to where they feel like they're asleep. And they'll come in and out of consciousness. So there's lots of ways that it can happen. So but you always, first of all, your subconscious is always going to hear and remember everything I say, whether you consciously remember and hear it or not. So you could fall asleep, and I'm still going to be doing the work with your subconscious, because your conscious mind, I want it to go somewhere else. I want it to relax. I want you to relax so deeply that you're just like, I don't really care what happens. I'm just going to relax. It's like this deep meditative.
I'm like, okay.
You're like, okay. All those years of phone customer service, I'm telling you.
Right.
Yeah,
that's what it was setting you up for.
And the thing about it is that even though you're in or you're out, like, you're always in control. Like somebody in hypnosis, or somebody who is ethically working with hypnosis, I'll put it like this, where they allow, or they let you know that you're always in control, you're always safe, you're always secure, everything's okay, right? So knowing that, you get to just relax, and you don't care what you remember, you don't care how you feel. And I think once you get it past the first time and you get to understand how it feels and what it is, then you're like, oh, this is like guided meditation times 10, really is what it's like. But guided meditation tends to work in the conscious, and hypnosis just goes a step deeper and works in the subconscious.
So I'm so intrigued and also frustrated, because I spent the entirety of this year, and it's not even over yet, but like, I didn't even know what I was doing was called shadow work or like whatever, but like spending time going and finding the roots of like so many things that I've been wanting to like heal and like get out of some of the cycles that I was in life. I want to tell you, it's taken me months to even find the root of it. And then like to, you know, like what you were saying, like the positive talk and like help reprogram it and all that, like do all that. And what you're saying from my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that I could have gone to a hypnosis session and had that handled in about 2 hours. Is this correct or am I?
I could have taken a shortcut. You know what I'm going to say?
This interview is over. I'm about to book a session.
No, here's what I'm going to say to that. Everything matters. And so if you were led to go through that process, there was a reason that you needed to go through that process. And this is why I work really well with therapists, because a therapist will do the conscious work with you, the shadow work, basically, right? And then you get to the place where you're like, okay, I've done all this work. I feel like I'm at a plateau, or I feel like I'm hitting a wall. That's where I come in. And we release whatever is holding you down or holding you back or creating that block. And we work on that for a few sessions, and then you go back to your therapist, or we work in tandem. Like I have a client right now that I have been seeing the whole year, and I'm so proud of the work that she's done. Like, you know, I won't talk about her personal, you know, case, but I work very close in tandem with her therapist, and both are needed. She needs that talk therapy, and the hypnosis has been incredibly helpful for her. And sometimes it hits like right away, like me with anger and rage. I was like, yeah, now I get it. And I just wasn't angry anymore. But for some people, it's a slow buildup. It's a slow working. And so they may not have like an aha moment, but they might realize one day, you know what, it's been 6 weeks since I obsessed about that thing. Or I haven't really been feeling like that for a couple months now. And so it's this realization that there has been a change without having to really make it happen. You know, you're just doing the work. You're going to your therapist, you come into sessions with me, and it's just working together really well. That's where I like to work. I feel like that's where I do my best work, is in tandem with therapists.
Because you're doing the deep dive, the subconscious, and then they're doing the like more day-to-day conscious level work with them. That does fit you so well, like the deep dive Pisces that you are, like that. The hypnosis like really makes sense. Like, yeah, that's the show.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. But that's so cool. That's so interesting. I didn't realize like it would be such an immediate, not immediate, like you said, not for everyone. But really quickly, you said that, so during the session, you could, like, you, I guess, converse with the subconscious. I don't know, but you said, like, if the subconscious feels like the conscious needs to know, it will slowly reveal it to the conscious. So would that be a case where some people just realize later on, like, oh, all right, so this thing hasn't shown up, so.
That, or it could be like, oh, that's why I reacted that way. Yeah.
Okay.
It could be that too.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
And then there's like, oh, all right. I can let that go.
Right.
Yeah.
I might be at a space where I can stop doing this. Yeah, that's
doing your training. You guys are like you said, you guys are practice with each other, on yourself. You know, going through that, were there some things you went through that just wasn't one session, or, you know, like every time you guys meet, you know, like how did you keep finding things to deal with or talk about, or today I need to focus on this? And
yeah, well, each class had its own focus. So we just took life events that corresponded to what that lesson was for that class. So, you know, so it's like basic hypnosis, advanced, and then we go into cellular releasing. Well, cellular releasing, that's when we're really doing like the deep dive stuff. Cellular command is when so the next step of cellular releasing is cellular command, where we're actually working with the cellular memory in your body, and through the subconscious commanding it to be restored to where it was, like your original blueprint in the way your body works. So when we got to that, we were working on things that might be wrong in our body. So I worked with chronic pain because I have chronic pain. So I worked with that. When we did past life regression, we did past life regression on each other, and that was a very interesting class. And that's one of my favorite things to do. And past life regression actually is also very therapeutic because it's not like, oh, I just want to know, did I live a past life? But it's what happened in that life. You don't experience the death all over again, because I think that's just morbid. If a hypnotist makes you walk through that process, like you'll see it, you'll understand it, but you won't like experience it. But really where the work is done is evaluating that life in what we call in the in-between space. So in the space between lives. So in hypnosis, we'll talk about, okay, so what happened in that life? Who was there with you? What lesson do you think you needed to learn? Do you think you carried that lesson into the next life? What kind of work do you need to do to work through that in the next life? Like, so we'll do a deep dive into like things that you bring from life to life until we get to this life. And hopefully what's happened is that we've had a chance to, release some of those things that you've carried from life to life. Of course, you have to be a believer in past lives and, that kind of thing. But it can be therapeutic in the fact that maybe you have been working through an issue in your life and you have no idea where it originated. And it's something that just keeps showing up in your life. Well, maybe it's a past life issue. And what if you go back and release that? And cut the ties so you don't have to identify with that issue anymore. And then we wake up from hypnosis and you realize that you're not carrying that thing anymore. Now, what you may have to do is work around whatever issues that issue has left in your life, right? But you're not doing it from the standpoint of being burdened with that issue. You're doing it from the place of, I have emotional freedom from that issue. Now let me fix this. Let me heal from this, because I'm not carrying it anymore. Does that make sense? So past life regression is also really interesting. We had classes on children. So I learned how to do hypnosis on children. We didn't really do a lot of practice there because we needed kids. But it's the same.
For sure.
I know. Right? I do have some grandkids. But it's the same concept, same steps, same thing. It just is geared with verbiage and pattern and language for children. What are some of the other things we did? So stage hypnosis was fun. We just got to kind of practice that. I think the one class, besides our first class, the one class that really impacted me the most is we did a class on grief, PTSD, and depression. And so I was dealing with some grief in my life that I thought was gone. Regarding a death of somebody in my life. And every year around the same time, I would go into a depression, and it was subconscious. I couldn't help it. Every November and December, I felt like my world was going to fall apart, because it was in November and December that my world fell apart a few years ago, and I couldn't get out of it. And so in that class, it was I think it was in October or November. I think it was in November. And it was so right on time, because I felt myself sinking into that and I needed to pull myself out of it. And so we had some hypnosis around grief and release and healing. And I think that one was incredibly powerful and changed my life. And as we move into the season, I know I'm going into it without carrying that with me. And so I think what I'm trying to say is that each class presents itself, and you don't even have to look for things. Like, you're going to have something in your life that you may be grieving over, or that you need to let go, or some pain in your body, or some, every class we could relate personally. Mm-hmm. That was a really long answer to your question.
No, it was a really good answer. And that's so crazy that you talk about, so ironic that you talk about the time of year, because Katina was just talking about that. I feel like it was even this week. I don't know if it was Last week.
Yeah, we just recorded a podcast with someone who brought up a certain time of year something happens, and then personally, Whitney and I had a conversation about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were talking about different things in our lives that show up at the same time of the year and how we had kind of dealt with it so it wouldn't happen, but just always. But the person we did the episode, hers was like positive, or I was kind of negative. But either way, it's just good to notice those trends, and if they are negative, getting rid of them. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And sometimes we don't even realize why it's happening. I mean, I was really clear because mine was such a big event. Like I knew, and I feel like maybe subconsciously I created it. I'd expected it. But sometimes we don't know why these patterns show up, or why, a certain time of year will bring, certain behaviors or certain thoughts or certain feelings within your body. It's because our subconscious, it's our greatest protector, and also can be sometimes our greatest nemesis, because in its protection, it's going to do whatever it thinks it needs to do to protect us. And sometimes the habits that it creates out of protecting us isn't always what's healthy for us, but it is going to make us cope and be able to be, functional in the moment. And if we don't work through whatever that issue is, that pattern or that habit or that behavior becomes a habit and a pattern that then blocks us from our best self later on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like it's protecting us down on that level, but when it comes back up to this level, like we're seeing it in the physical world, we're like, okay, subconscious, hold up, homie, this isn't actually being helpful.
Yeah.
Like I appreciate you, but
Right.
we kind of move forward.
We need to reevaluate this relationship.
Right.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
I know. I learned so much just from that one statement, though, because that's just, I never thought about the subconscious, creating those bad habits for us. But when it did, it was to protect us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you said that it helped you specifically in, like when you knew that certain time of year was coming up, and now you still know, but you handle it differently. I'm trying to understand, because you still know it's going to happen, but how does the hypnosis of it shift how it affected you?
So in a couple of ways. So let me give you a little bit of background. So in November and December of 2012, I lost a girlfriend to suicide, and it was traumatic, and it was just devastating, right? And my world completely fell apart at that time. Fast forward, even a year later, I met my wife that I'm married to now. My life is good. Things are happy. But come the next December, subconsciously, my mind was preparing me to go through that emotion again, right? So it was like, not like, oh, this is going to happen again, but it's like the guards were coming up, and it was like, okay, just let's prepare, because we don't want you to be as hurt as you were last time. And what would happen is it would trigger all that sadness and all that grief. And I worked through the grief, but there was still a portion of it that I hadn't let go of. And I think that really that was on a subconscious level, and that was what was creating this depression. And I would have this impending doom, like something was going to happen, like something would happen to my wife, or I would lose my job, or I would lose my house. I mean, I just felt like the world was going to fall apart. And I didn't show that a lot, because I think I knew that wasn't going to happen, but that feeling was so like gut rooted that I didn't know what to do with it. And so each year it just got worse and worse and worse. So last year, what I was able to do through hypnosis is go through almost like a ritual, right, through hypnosis that saw this person and was really able to send her off in a way that felt permanent and loving and like it was a real goodbye. Because when somebody takes their life, you don't get to say goodbye. And so you get to, I had a chance to really do that, and to do it on a deep soul level. And because of that, I now can process, if any of those thoughts come up, I can now process that it was completely related to that moment in my life, to that experience, but I'm separated from the emotion of it so that I can process the thought consciously that is not my reality.
Oh.
Make sense?
That's powerful. Yeah. Okay. That makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Right.
So, it was a powerful, hypnosis ceremony that I had, basically. And it was exactly what I needed. And I have no dread. Like normally this time of year, I'd be like, oh, it's the fall. It's coming up. I don't feel that at all. And I'm really looking forward to this holiday season.
Yeah.
I'm like a hypnosis number one fan right now.
It's a great. I was like, I'm gonna make hypnosis great. Like, I'm
with you. I was looking up hypnosis, clinical hypnosis in Atlanta. And I was like finding ones around me, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna go. I need to go. But I didn't find a lady, so I still have to look. Because not that I have a problem with the man in the hypnotist, I just don't feel like.
You feel more comfortable with a woman?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that completely. It's why I built my business the way that I did, and we can talk about that. But when I come to Atlanta, because I do come, let's schedule something.
Yes, I would love that.
My in-laws live there, so we come at least a couple times a year.
Perfect. And it's almost the holidays.
You're like, so you should be here soon.
Right.
Let me get on your calendar now.
Right.
Right. At the end of the call, you guys can go ahead and arrange something.
Right.
We can, but I could do some sessions remotely too. So if it is something that you want, we can talk about it and see what we can do remotely.
Perfect.
Yeah. Awesome. That's dope. Yeah, it's really interesting how this conversation with you has coincided with some of the other interviews we've had, and then some conversations that we've had personally. So life is just crazy, fickle, mister.
Everything is.
Yeah. So I guess you were kind of finding that, like, while you were in school to become a hypnotist, like, as you were healing through practicing on one another, but like that everything matters. Like, you chose this degree and you chose this field, and then you're like healing through your rage and some past traumas and stuff like that. What other kind of things were showing up for you? Maybe not even just necessarily while you were in school, but just during this process that were showing you that you were on the right path, moving to Houston, choosing to be a hypnotist, and just where you are now.
Yeah, I think ultimately it just felt right. And I think that that's where I am in my life right now, where I'm allowing myself to trust my intuition and to trust the process, and to know that I've made a good decision in what I'm doing and where I'm going, and that in following that and in heeding my own call to do what I know is right for me, that the rest will open up. That doesn't mean that I don't have to do work or that I don't have to make it happen. But I think for me, this was a big test or a big lesson in being like vulnerable with myself, trusting my intuition, and allowing the process just to happen. And that was new for me because I'm very much an A-type personality. I've always been an A-type personality. I see something I want to make it happen. I might get distracted because I like shiny things, but I still am very driven that way. And I didn't have that option here. And I didn't have that option here because I didn't have a support system in the way that I had in other cities that I lived in. Like when I lived in Atlanta, I had a huge network there, and I could, if I ever needed anything or I needed a resource or I wanted to do something, I had lots of friends and family, and like it was a good place for me. And I left there and I moved to DC, and after a while I had that same network. And then I left there. And when I came to Houston, it was very different. I found myself very alone, very secluded, very, having to spend time. It's like, that the people, you hear people say like, you don't really get to know yourself until you spend time with yourself. Like, get quiet, get to know yourself. Like this was my quiet time. For the last 2 years, I've spent a lot of time alone because I work from home mostly, unless I'm seeing clients. I don't have a lot of friends here. I'm still trying to make friends, and that's a whole other process. We'll talk about making friends as grown-ups. Adult friendly. It's so weird. It's so weird and awkward. And I always feel like I'm the weird one, right? But I found myself more vulnerable here because I didn't have anybody except my wife and my daughter. And while they are amazing people and a great support system, I'm usually a very social person. And I found that this last couple of years I haven't been. I've retreated and gone inward, which means that, there's loneliness that you battle there. And, and in that, you got to find who you are. I think this is the first time I really had to spend time with myself to figure out who I was without all the noise of.
In your life?
Yeah, I think so.
Were you a person before you had to do that who didn't like to be alone or who was rarely alone?
I had, I'm like this, right? I'll go, spend time, go do here, be involved in all the things. And then when I've had it, I'll retreat for a couple of days. And I'll have my alone time, and I'll be like, it's too many people. It's very people-y out there. I just need some quiet time, right? But when I moved here, it was the complete opposite. I was alone more than I was out there doing stuff. And normally, like in other cities like Vegas, I lived in Vegas, I lived in Atlanta, I lived in DC, I was out doing stuff all the time, just involved in things. Either, Atlanta was kind of like my party city, so I had a lot of fun in Atlanta. DC was a lot more serious. So it wasn't really parties. It was events. Like we would hear speakers, or we would go to book reviews, or we would go do lots of intellectual stuff. And so, but I was still always out and involved in something. And then I moved here, and it's not that. There's no noise. And that's part, I think, of, you're healing yourself, or I'm healing myself, because I got to spend time with myself. And instead of feeling something and then going and covering that up with an activity or a person or, a thing or whatever, I had to sit here and figure it out and evaluate it and figure out how it felt in my body, how it felt in my heart, what I wanted to do with that feeling, how I wanted to let it move through me. Whereas before, being so busy, I could just maybe ignore it. There's a big difference. Yeah.
So what do you use to help you with that?
You guys combine each other.
Yeah. That's like a great time to be in. You learn so much about yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of people are scared of that moment. Like, because I'm a huge proponent of, like, you need to take time in your life and just find that time, like that wilderness period that you're talking about, and spend, like, I'm like at least a year in as much seclusion as you can and really find yourself and discover yourself.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's scary to people, and people don't want to do it. And like, it's quicker to run to your phone or your computer and be like, all right, that was enough time by myself, because that was scary. But
that was a hard 5 minutes.
Longest 5 minutes of
my life.
I finally did it, though. I just spent time with myself.
Hashtag goals. Right.
Over there.
I see what y'all are talking about. That was right. But you're talking about stuff that maybe some people haven't even gotten to, when you're like, feel through it and like allow myself to feel it and see what I want to do with it. Like, people are listening maybe and they're like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, what does that feel through it, Michelle? What does that mean? And then what tools did you use or are you using during this time to learn yourself? Like, for real, know what an emotion is and a feeling and a thought, and like, what are you talking about? Like, let's break it down.
Such a great question. So I think that we are conditioned in this life that there are good emotions and bad emotions, right? What are some of the good emotions? Happiness, joy, love. Those are good.
Those are awesome.
Mm-hmm. What do we designate as bad emotions?
People think the bad motion could be love too.
We're going to work on that hard.
Your questions are going to be focused on softening their heart.
Right.
It's perspective. I guess what I'm trying to say is perspective. But society tells us that there are negative emotions. So things like anger, rage, sadness, that kind of stuff. I think moving through my metaphysical degree, moving through the hypnosis program, I got to look at a lot of that stuff differently. And what I came to understand is that emotions are not negative or positive. They're just emotions. So if they're just emotions, then why not just allow ourselves to feel them? Because they're not defining us. They're just emotions. They can move through us. We're experiencing them for a reason. So let me stop and see what the reason this emotion is here. But I will tell you, it can be very hard to get to that place because emotions can be scary as fuck. Like they're just scary.
Yes.
I think one of the most things that I hear when I tell somebody to allow themselves to feel is that they're scared that if they turn on that faucet, that it won't stop. Mm-hmm. And they're just barely holding on. And so if they turn that knob and that water starts coming out or those tears start coming out, they're just not going to stop, and they don't know how to handle it. And they don't have the strength to put their life back together in the way that they need to function in the way that they have created their life to be at that moment. Right. Mm-hmm. The two things. One, we have to do what we have to do to cope because real life happens around us every day. And it is understandable that people are keeping their lives tied together and saying, I don't have time for emotions. That's a real thing. And I want to honor that. But what happens if you just took a day, a quiet day, where you could just allow yourself to feel whatever you felt and allow yourself to cry and allow yourself to be vulnerable with yourself, allow yourself to be angry, allow yourself to be furious, allow yourself to be sad. What would happen if you just allowed yourself to do that without judgment, without trying to figure out why, without trying to place it, just feel it. So I think that's the first thing that I did is I would come up with something and I would just allow myself to feel it. And I wouldn't judge it. I wouldn't judge the emotion. I wouldn't judge myself for feeling it. I wouldn't judge the circumstance that brought it to me. I would just feel it. And then I would allow it to move through me. Because so much of our trauma lives in our bodies because we trap it there. Because it happens to us, we feel the emotion, and then we don't allow ourselves to feel the emotion, so it just stays in our body. And how much of that can you really take before you just explode? Mm-hmm. So to answer the question is, I just allowed myself to feel it. And I know what that's like for me, and I know how to walk somebody through it if they're there with me and I'm working through them in a session. But there's not and I can do that individual for them, but I can't say that there's like this general way to do that because everybody is so different. But the main thing is just allowing yourself to feel. And then once you allow yourself to feel, you allow that emotion to move out of you. And it's kind of like hypnosis, where once we can release that, we can look at it from a different perspective. And then maybe we can understand why we reacted that way, or why that thing hurt us, or why that thing made us cry, or why that thing pissed us off. And if we can understand the why, then oftentimes we can, when it comes to us again, we can see it from a new perspective and handle it differently.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was wanting, was kind of a breakdown for people who don't know what that means, because that's perfect.
Okay. Allow yourself to feel. I mean, at the end of the day, even if you can't do it in the moment, because I know nobody wants to, walk around sobbing, crying all the time when they're really sad because they've got real life shit to do.
Right. Yeah.
Right? But setting aside time. And it doesn't have to be like this super big ritual. It doesn't have to be, maybe it's just you take a drive for a couple of hours in your car and you just put on some music and you allow the tears to fall. Or you scream at the top of your lungs. Or, just being in a space where you can feel for just a moment. You'd be surprised how therapeutic that is.
That's so real. Especially, I mean, you prefaced it perfectly at the beginning of this explanation in our conditioning with emotions. In my opinion, I think that especially with men, like we're taught, emotions are bad, kind of all of them, like crying, too much, happiness, like you need to be in control, like don't let these things seep out of you, pour out of you. So like when we do go through traumatic things, like I had to, like for me to even get to the root of some of the things that I was going through, like I had to accept some of these feelings so I could get through them to get to the root. But to be able to do that when I'm not used to that was so difficult. But it's because that looks like weakness, or for me that's what. But yeah, that conditioning can like be a huge roadblock.
Yeah, absolutely.
But after, like you said, just allowing those things, it's powerful. Yeah. But I can see why people don't do it. And like spending that time, you said a day, like a lot of people might be afraid of that because, that's a lot of time to have to sit and handle something that might be scary.
Yeah.
And then my thing, like for me, when I learned how to do that, went through it, my fear was reliving the emotions. The emotions were so painful, so hurtful. The imagery in my head is, and like, why am I going to force my battle that I would go back and forth with God would be, why am I going to force myself to relive this?
Yeah.
Why am I going to cause myself to hurt again? But it was, it's worth it. You have to like, go through it to get to the other side. But that was like my fear, and it's a real one.
It is. I think that we underestimate also the power of intention. And so I think that if I could give somebody advice in going through like a moment where they allow themselves to feel, it's okay to set an intention that, I'm going to allow myself to feel this, but I'm not going to allow myself to revisit the trauma. I'm just going to allow the emotion to move through me. But when the trauma comes to mind, when I start to feel it or when I start to see it, I'm going to set the intention that my mind will focus more on my body in the process versus the memory. And so that intention just redirects your mind. And it may not happen perfectly, but you've set the intention so that you know what to do should those images come to mind. You just redirect yourself back to being present and literally almost envisioning that emotion running through your body and releasing.
So it's kind of like setting a self-boundary.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to go there.
Right.
Yeah. Part of what came out of my own rage work is that I created a course, and I'm finishing it up, called Rage Release. I have one more lesson that I need to record on it. But one of the lessons that are in this series, and it's a guided meditation series to help you work with the emotion of anger and rage. And one of the things that there's two meditations in particular that help do this. One is becoming familiar with the emotion. So this particular course is focused on anger and rage, but you can substitute anger and rage for sadness or, whatever the emotion is. And it's a meditation that walks you through having a conversation with or becoming familiar with anger or the emotion as if it's a separate entity from you. So you get to ask it questions. Because it is. You get to ask it questions like, why are you here? Why did you show up? What lesson do I need to know? How can I work through you? Right? Because even though it's separate from you, your subconscious mind knows the answers to make that work for you. And so really what you're doing is you're having a conversation with your subconscious mind about this emotion that is the object of the conversation that you're having. And so that's one tool, right? You can have a conversation with it. Why are you here, sadness?
I love that.
Yeah. And then the other exercise that I walked people through was journeying to a setting. In a particular meditation, it's a house, right, where you're sitting on the couch next to your inner self, like your subconscious, your critical self, like the part of you that is most critical. I guess that's what it is. It's the part of you that's most critical.
Your inner saboteur.
Your inner saboteur. Thank you. I couldn't remember what it was. Yes. Your inner saboteur. And you get to set boundaries with that saboteur. Mm-hmm. So you're sitting next to them and you guys are having a conversation and you're setting boundaries and you're saying things like, I understand that you were here to help me, but this is no longer helping me. And so I am right now stating this is how it's going to be from now on. And you get to, and I have it all laid out for you and just walks you through as a guided meditation. It's not hypnosis, it's a meditation, but it still does some of the same work. Yeah. But what it does is it separates you from the emotion. Yeah, it's a really powerful series. I need to finish that one class so I can get it up and ready to go. Yeah. I did it in my Facebook Live group.
Yeah, can you hurry up and do it so I can go ahead and
I'm going to try that tonight.
So wait, if you guys, Kristen, I think I have you in my group. I'll put you in my group and then you can add Whitney. And
okay, I think I'm in the Facebook.
Yeah, and it's in there. So, yep, there's like 3 or 4 meditations. So go to the oldest one and work your way back. Okay. Yeah.
I'll add you it.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I'm going to take that. I have one last class that I'm creating that is dealing with forgiveness. Because, I think forgiveness and anger is a big one, but I think there's lots of ways to look at forgiveness. So,
yeah.
I'm going to do a lesson.
But we just missed a critical moment to plug you real quick because you just talked about your group.
Yeah.
Can you please let the listeners know exactly what you're talking about and how to find you?
Sure. So I have a private Facebook group, and I've not been as diligent as I should be in it. And I launch it for interaction with people when I'm launching something, like when I did the Rage Release series. But I think the best way to find me is on Facebook or Instagram, and I can give all the links for you guys if you want to put them in the show notes. But you can really just Google me, or just search for me in Facebook. I'm open. So you want me to say all the stuff?
That was the worst plug ever. You're like, I'm not going to introduce you.
I know, right?
Find me. This lady didn't spell her name. She didn't say.
All right.
I mean, we can wait to release it till you have it all up and ready, but you still got to plug it properly.
That was so sad, right? Okay. All right. So where can you find me? You can find me on Facebook, and you can search my name, Michelle Dowell-Vest, Dowell-Vest, like a vest that you wear. My business page is the Women's Hypnosis and Healing Collective. And so you can search that on Facebook as well. My website is womenshhc.com. And then that's my business website for my hypnosis collective. And we'll talk about that. But I also have my personal website that is just michelledowvest.com. And that's where I do more of my spiritually related coaching. So spiritual coaching, empowerment, oracle readings. I'm also a minister, so, all of my minister services are listed there as well.
Oh my gosh, that was so good.
Was it? You can also find me on Instagram. I like to post that a lot. Today I was looking at my Instagram. I was like, what do I post on Instagram? Okay. Food, plants, dogs, selfies. Maybe every now and then my wife or my grandbabies.
Right.
Yeah. Funny.
Okay. So that was a great plug and a cute segue too. So, so we were talking about what it means to spend time with yourself, what that really looks like what that really means. You used a buzzword earlier. It was like buzzphrase, I should say.
Everything
I
matters?
think it may have been but we'll get to that too. But I think it was trust the process. And we hear that, but we kind of touched on it just now, like a little bit of, spending time with yourself and what that really means. But people say trust the process, people repost it and regram it and re-quote it. But I'm not sure that people aren't just regurgitating and not really digesting what it means to trust the process. Like, what is that? Like, if I were to see that posted somewhere and I'm like, okay, this sounds really cute. What does it mean to trust the process? How do I do it? This is so cute. I want to do it.
This is cute, but it's so hard.
Right.
Yeah. I think what I was saying earlier is that I'm a real A-type personality and I want to direct everything. And that's just not working in my life right now. So I just step back and go, okay. All right, universe, this is cool. We're homies. All right, what is it now? Like, what do I need to do? And then for me, what that looked like was trusting my intuition. So my intuition and the process really are buddies. They go hand in hand. And what that meant is that I had to learn to trust myself, to really understand what it is that I wanted, trust the internal cues that I give myself, learn what those are. It's like learn my own intuitive language, if that makes sense. And once I understood that intuitive language, I understood how I interacted with what was happening around me. And because what was happening around me was directed by my intuition, I wasn't doing anything that I didn't want to do. Everything that I did, I was choosing it. I was actively involved. I was 100% present. I was able to trust it.
Okay, that raises questions. Because I'm trying to see this from a person who knows what none of this means, or has just regurgitated it so much they don't really know what it means. So how would you know the difference between your inner saboteur and your intuition? Because maybe your inner saboteur is telling you to do something and it feels great and this is the best thing for you. But how is that different from your intuition being like, this is the direction we need to go in, this is the next step? What is the difference?
Yeah.
How do you know?
I think for me, there's peace and I feel confident. Versus with my inner saboteur, I feel like, I don't know.
Anxious or
right. It's anxious. It's rushed. Things don't go right. And it's just not, it's not flowing, and so I think kind of one of these things that we're conditioned to do again, right? And especially as women, we're conditioned to not trust that gut feeling about things. And we're conditioned to please other people, to not set boundaries, to say yes all the time, to do those things that are expected of us as women, but actively go against what we want to do. And so there's a lot of turmoil and peace when we do that, or a lot of turmoil and no peace when we do that.
Right.
So you start saying no. You start asking yourself, is this something that you really want to do? You're engaging only when you want to engage. And you are trusting that your feeling is right versus questioning in it. Because we've just been taught to question it. I don't know if I really feel like that. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. Maybe I'm just, I'm exaggerating. No, this is your gut feeling. Trust it. And then live in that, in what you allow that to create. And for me, that's trusting the process.
So it's you recognize that something's not working. You sit down with the process and your intuition and start navigating from that space instead, or what you said, acknowledging it. Like, you realize something's not working, and you're like, okay, what do we do next? And then start going into that feeling space.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's good. I love that differentiation, because I was thinking some things were from intuition before, and then I had to realize very quickly, if I'm doing this because I feel like I'm rushed, or like I've got to hurry up and do this by this, or like if I feel like there's pressure that I'm putting on myself, like that's not intuition. Intuition doesn't act like that. It doesn't come from that kind of a space. So I love that. That's
like, what's the fruit?
really good.
What's the fruit?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like, what's the fruit? Because the fruit is really going to tell you where you're operating from and what you're leaning on. Are you leaning on your own intuition and your own process, or are you leaning on expectations and what you think you should be doing and how you think people want you to be? Or are you leaning on your own stuff?
Is that something that you realized this year? Like, were you, like you said, you spent more time alone than you've ever had. Like, were you seeing like you're awakening more to stuff that from your own understanding?
I think these were concepts
than ever before.
I think these were concepts that I knew of. Like, I could talk the language, but I had never done the work. It was not until I really was able to get quiet that I was able to do the work.
Okay.
Makes sense.
I heard you use the term spirit language. What is that? I never heard that before.
So I think I said intuitive language.
Yeah.
So your intuitive language is the language that you're into. It's like your intuition has its own language, like whether it's signs, symbols, feelings, emotions. It's things that in ways that your intuition speaks to you. So like when you get those butterflies you walk into a place and you get those butterflies in your stomach and you're like, something's not right here, right? That's your intuitive language.
Okay.
And so the more
like interpreting how it's speaking.
Yeah. The more you start to dig into that and the more you start to pay attention to that, the more expansive that language gets. And so you'll be able to correlate, you'll be able to put two and two together more when it comes to like circumstances on the outside paired with how you feel. And so you'll get to understand what that really means. Like, I know if I go to this place and I feel this way, I know what that really means to me. And then allowing yourself to be okay with that feeling that you felt yourself versus what you think you should do in that moment.
And that takes a lot of work. Like learning that, like paying attention to it, seeing what's going on in the physical, and then going back inside yourself and being like, okay, in this situation, this is what this meant. And then continuing to pair those things. Well, for me, it does. Because I've never paid attention to myself like that before.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the step one is giving yourself permission to do so, giving yourself permission to believe how you feel. And I think once you give yourself permission to believe how you feel and what you're feeling, the rest starts to come because you've opened yourself up. And I'm not saying you don't do any of the work, like you don't develop that, but you start to open up and you start to notice it more because you've given yourself permission.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
And that's true, especially the permission part. We live in such like a left-brained world where it's like everything is logical and this way and this way. And I think that's why you were saying before, like especially with women, we're discouraged from operating from that intuition.
Yeah, we are.
That's not right. Don't do it.
If you ain't feeling it, don't do it. And guess what? Everybody around you, they'll adjust.
Right, they'll be okay.
They'll be okay.
Especially if they're doing their own work, they will not have time to be concerned about like, oh no, she told me no, my heart is broken.
Yeah, and even if they're not doing their work, they'll still be okay.
That's an actual fact.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving through hypnotist school, clinical hypnotist school, going to school to be a clinical hypnotist. Right. You know what I'm saying though.
Right.
It's like I went to magic school.
Right. Going to the school of magic. Oh wait, what's the Harry Potter school?
Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Hogwarts. Going through the school of Hogwarts and wizardry.
Wait,
Wizardry. That's hilarious.
Oh, really quickly, I love that you touched on before you're like that you made a point to say that like you don't like while people are not under but like being hypnotized that they're not doing anything that they don't want to do, because I think that is a part of what Hollywood and stage hypnotists will show you. Like it is that like, oh, they're gonna make me like bark like a dog or cluck like a chicken, and I'm not gonna be able to control it. Every time I hear this thing, I'm gonna be triggered to do this. So I love that you made sure that you mentioned like, no, this is something that you're in control of in this state, like with your subconscious, and no one's making you do anything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because I think that was important.
So, it is very important, especially with all the information out there about hypnosis. And, it's been demonized in ways that it didn't need to be. But it's an easy target. It's for some people, like they believe it's a spiritual practice. And so it must be mystical, but really it's not a spiritual practice. It's a scientific method, that has just been misinterpreted as a spiritual practice because it's not.
Yeah, and let's talk about that really quickly, because you have two separate practices.
Mm-hmm.
One is for your hypnosis, clinical hypnosis practice, that you work in conjunction with therapists. And then you also have something separate that is on the spiritual side, and they may coincide. I'm not sure. I'll let you explain that. But do you keep those separate for a reason, or tell us a little bit about it, Michelle?
Okay, I'll do that. So yes, I have two separate websites, two separate businesses. Sometimes they bleed over, but they'll bleed over in more one direction than the other. So we're going to start with my actual hypnosis practice. So my hypnosis practice is called the Women's Hypnosis and Healing Collective. It is a hypnosis practice and healing collective that focuses solely on women and their healing needs. So I only work with women, and I allow that definition to be expansive. If somebody identifies as a woman, then they have space with my clinic or my practice. And that includes like non-binary people, includes trans people. If you've ever identified on the spectrum of womanhood or you're non-binary, this is a space for you. And in that, I do, like you said, I work with therapists, and I also have a lot of standalone clients. And so we'll do things like, let me see, pull up some of my services. So I do a lot of like ego strengthening, which is like self-confidence, helping, you with self-esteem, self-love, image confidence, like discovering the power of your voice, improving dating confidence, gender confidence, that kind of stuff. And then I do a lot of emotional freedom, which is releasing things like fear, anxiety, and guilt, doing some releasing to emotional intimacy, lots of like emotional release stuff. And this is where I also do grief work, and then through hypnosis, and then trauma and PTSD. And I'm always paired with a therapist there. I do some health and wellness stuff. So I do the normal like smoking cessation, weight management, or like pain management, sleep better, deeper, that kind of stuff. And then I also, because I work strictly with women, I do a lot of reproductive health and fertility and pregnancy hypnosis as well. So, some of the reproductive things that I can help with, like if you have pain with periods, I can help with that. PMS, I can help with somebody who is going through like pre-hysterectomy work, and then post-hysterectomy work to work through that whole process. Somebody who's going through like menopause and hot flashes, and maybe even reduced pain associated with sex. So there's lots of things that we can do on the reproductive side. Fertility and pregnancy, hypnobirthing is a big thing, where you can use hypnosis to move through pregnancy and birthing, and even into the fourth trimester, managing not just your emotions, but the changes in your body, experience birth without pain, and then the emotional wellness in your last trimester. So I do a lot of that work. And then I do some stuff with the LGBTQ community. So help with coming out, gender releasing, gender transitioning, that kind of stuff. So that's the work that I do with my hypnosis practice. The work that I do as a minister is a little bit different. Sometimes hypnosis comes into that because I'm going to use hypnosis like in my intuitive spiritual coaching. So intuitive spiritual coaching would, so it's a little bit different than, regular coaching where, we're looking and using, like the spirit side of you to move through whatever issue you're feeling. So, with one of my, intuitive spiritual coaching clients, I might do things like help them develop their intuitive language, like we talked about. We can drill down and identify stagnant emotions and soul ties and soul contracts and emerging life lessons. And so we do a lot of soul work there. We'll do some things like using past life regression to try to look at that and evaluate that. So I do, and there's a bunch of stuff. There's a whole plan that I work with, but that's what spiritual coaching might look like. And then I also do what I call empowerment readings, which is really tarot or oracle cards. And I use them to help you have a deeper connection with your own intuition, but also maybe to help you kind of look at what's going on in your life and help the pieces fit together. I love cards because they're just like a tool, right? And they're a tool that really empower the conversation that you're probably already having with yourself. And so sometimes we have a reading because we already know what we want to do with a particular situation, but we may need to hear it, or we may need just an insight. And I love cards because I believe that they work intuitively, and oftentimes they can just give us some insight that maybe we need to help us make a decision, or to be like, oh, okay, all that makes sense now. I don't do like future readings. Like that's not the kind of reading that I do, but it's more of like coaching readings.
Mm-hmm. Like help bring externally the stuff that people are thinking internally, and help them put the pieces together by speaking out loud, or like bring it out.
Exactly.
Get out of their head, I guess.
Yeah. And then as a minister, I'm not ever interested in like pastoring a church or anything like that, but I do provide ad hoc services to communities that are generally marginalized by mainstream religion. So like the pagan community, the LGBTQ community, the poly community, agnostic community, because sometimes there are needs for ministers for like, weddings or funerals or baby blessings or, stuff like that. That's what I do with my ministerial services. So those are my two businesses.
Yeah, I saw a post of yours a few weeks back, and someone was like, oh, I could have used your services a while ago, because you do like non-denominational services or something like that. And some families, we don't realize in this country sometimes that not everyone is religious, as far as that it's committed to a religion and certain belief systems. So
yeah,
I thought that was a great conversation.
Yeah, I love this kind of work because, I am myself a recovering evangelical, and I absolutely would not want to go to a Christian-centered church for services like that, because I feel like I would be traumatized. Like it was a traumatic experience for me, Christianity. So I don't want to go and participate in that, but I may still need a minister like at some point in my life. And so I know there are many people within the communities that I named, and I'm probably intersecting in all of those, where, they need the services. And so that's what I use my, ministerial designation for. And it's a, fully credited, ordained, ministerial designation.
This wasn't a self-diagnosis.
No.
Ordainment, like a...
Nope, I've got papers.
She got receipts, y'all. She got receipts.
Your name is like so many letters behind your name.
I really did.
Right. The credentials are serious.
And you're still getting new ones.
I am. It's funny. I know I went from having like no letters to like, I got letters.
Letters on letters on letters.
Letters on letters on letters. Yeah, I know. So funny. You're so silly.
So like, all right, so you moved out there solo dolo, to quote my homie.
Well, I did have my wife and I had my dogs, but yeah, no friends. I had no friends.
Yeah, like you had no friends. Your professional network had shifted dramatically because you stepped away from that, made a conscious decision to move in another direction. Mm-hmm. So with friends and like a network, like building your network professionally, like what has that process been like? Because I mean, yeah, like you're going through and have gone through the work to like heal yourself and to shift into this new place in your life. Mm-hmm. So now, like, are you approaching friendships differently? How are you using this new self-knowledge to find clients? Like, what is it like now in your life?
Yeah. So I think that, okay, so I'll take friends. I'm allowing
friends for 1,000.
I'll take friends for 1,000. I'm allowing, thank you, Alex. I think that, I think for the last few cities that I've lived in, my communities were very, very targeted in the queer community. I'm a queer woman, super gay. I love gay people. And I, very much support and want to be invested in my gay community. However, that changed when I moved here. And I felt like that was no longer, the main community that I was going to identify with. And that's not to say that I haven't connected with the gay community here, because I have. It just doesn't play as big a part in my life as it did in other cities that I've lived in. And as a queer person, I think that we do need to be really connected to our community. It's our safe haven, mostly. It is the place where we find, like-minded people and people who get our families, and we don't have to explain it. And I've made some friends here in the gay community, and they're really genuine, wonderful people. But I felt like the social community that I was meant to build here was more in the healing community. So other healers, people who were doing similar work. And I'm starting to find those people, and I'm just allowing it to unfold. I do make some effort sometime. I'll be like, hey, do you want to go to lunch? Or, hey, can I meet you at this event? Or, stuff like that. I do try to make an effort, but I also am like, whatever happens, happens. I believe that the people who are meant to be close to me will be close to me, and they will love me and I will love them, and we will build a community together, but I don't force it. So I've met some really genuine and wonderful people here in the healing community, and I'm excited to see where those friendships go.
Do you think you would have been in a space to be open to these types of relationships and friendships?
No.
Had you not moved to Houston and gone through the time in the wilderness that you spent alone?
No, I don't think I would have had the confidence. I don't think I would have felt worthy, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah.
Michelle?
I know. No, I went through a friend transformation when I was in DC. Like, there was a friendship that I had that fell apart, and it was one of the most like wounding events of my life. And it took me, and when I say this probably happened at this point, what is this, 2018? Maybe like 4 years ago, this friendship fell apart. It took me a good 2.5 years to get over it. And that's, it sounds so ridiculous, right? Because they're like, oh, it's just a friend. But it was the connection.
No, friendships are relationships.
They are. Right. They really are. But I think what it did, like when this friendship ended, it wasn't just like, oh, we had a blowout and it like ended and I went my way and she went her way. I was experiencing with this person a narcissistic relationship or a narcissistic friendship. And it wasn't probably until about a year after the friendship ended that I really realized that's what was happening. And after talking to other people who were mutual friends and seeing the same thing happen to them, I felt when that friendship ended, I felt like rejected. I felt very wounded. I felt very unworthy. My idea of who I thought I was in the community was damaged because of things that they said. There was like bullying that happened, and it was the craziest thing, right? I'm 40 years old at that point, and I'm experiencing like some high school shit. But it was incredibly wounding. And I think it was incredibly wounding because of where I was in my life at that time. So DC for me, while I made friends and I had community there eventually, there was a moment there where it wasn't that for me. And so moving here, I think some of that stuff still was there. And so I didn't have as much confidence as I had. Like, you knew me when I was in Atlanta, and there was a whole different level of confidence there. But DC wounded me a little bit. And so it made me retreat a little bit, and I wasn't as confident. And so had I started making these friendships from that place, I feel like I would have, because now I feel like I'm on equal level, right? Like, I'm emotionally healthy, they're emotionally healthy. Like, we can have an even exchange of energy. Whereas before, I don't feel like that would have been the case. I would have, where I was, and if I'm being really honest and I'm being really transparent, where I was before I moved here and went through this process the last couple of years, I would have not felt worthy to have these people in my life. I had to heal that.
And that's why you told us, I remember when we did the icebreaker, you have to trust the process.
Yeah.
And that's where you got that wisdom from.
And I did.
Yeah. And I'm glad that happened and you got rid of those people who, you wouldn't have known that didn't have your back like they should have.
Oh my God, it was insane. It was insane. And I can look back on it now and go, I don't know, wow. Like, just wow. But that was a big part of my healing too. It's just having that confidence back. And that is trusting my intuition, trusting the emotion, allowing myself to feel inadequate for a moment. How did that feel in my body?
Yeah.
How did that feel in my mind?
And not be ashamed of it.
And not be ashamed of it, because it's there for a reason. I feel even if it's not true, like, I know I'm not inadequate. I'm adequate as hell. But in that moment, I felt that, and I needed to go through that. And I needed to go through that so it could get unstuck from my body.
I think that's going to be a quote from your episode. I'm adequate as hell. That's such an important thing for people to realize, because you can go through all these things and get to the root of certain things, but when you get there and realize what's happening, but when you realize that you're so much greater than you probably think you are, or feel like you are, but that you're like just as worthy as everyone else of greatness, and like have more power than you think you have. And I think that's where a lot of us have to get to that realization. I started smiling when you were talking about the friendship that ended, but like all the realizations of yourself in that and where you are now.
Yeah.
And you got like super confident, and like not got confident, but like your speech and your tone was just very powerful while you were, making those proclamations of yourself. And that's really cool that you're in this space. Do you feel different? Do you like?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I do. I remember what that felt like, in DC, and, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. But I feel whole again. If that makes sense. Like I felt kind of broken in DC, and maybe, I left Atlanta after, my girlfriend passed. And I think DC was about that healing, there was a healing that happened on a whole in DC, right? I had to reevaluate like friendships and who I was in friendships and kind of figure out who I was with some of the ideas that I had. And so I had like a transformation of knowledge while I was there. And then and so I had like done surface work, if that's how I could categorize it. DC was about surface work, and I moved to Houston and it's about soul work. But I had to do that first level of healing in DC, where I had to go through that friendship breaking up. I had to go through some more of the grieving period from losing my girlfriend. Like I had to do that. But then there was also a lot of good things that happened in DC. Like I met my wife and I got married and, we went through some really great things together. So, when we talk about like, I'm going to just go off on a tangent here, but when we talk about healing, right? If we could relate it to our chakra system, and for people who aren't, familiar with.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad this is happening. I'm so excited.
Right. So we talk about like our chakra systems and so our root chakra is our very first chakra. It kind of sits at, like where like our tailbone, our pelvis, like that area, right? That's where our root chakra is. And I felt like in DC, I was doing root chakra work. So stability, things that make you feel like your life is going okay on the surface or on the foundational level. That's what I was doing there. I get here, like it starts moving up through my sacral chakra, through what is the belly button one? I can't think of it. There's two there that work in tandem, which really have to do with like your emotions and like your intuition, right? So those two, I've moved through a lot of that. I've done a lot of heart work. So as we move up the body, we get into the heart. And I feel like right now I'm doing healing with my throat chakra, where I'm finding my words again. I'm beginning to write again. And then it's starting to move through into like my third eye, where I'm becoming more intuitive, outside of my own self. So I'm actually seeing things in the world from a more intuitive place. Like it's my third eye. I'm seeing spirit. I'm seeing through eyes of spirit versus my own eyes. And then, my goal is to, try to tie spirit all together through my crown chakra. So I'm working up my energy body. I'm working up trying to get all of that in line. And right now I'm about my throat. So, and it's a process.
Yeah.
And so if you can like visualize that process just going up your body, that might help some people.
Yeah. It sounds like the crown and sacral were deeply and heart were like a lot of the solar plexus work, especially.
Solar plexus and sacral. Thank you. I could not think of that for my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to do that reparative work.
What I like that you talk about is when you do feel inadequate, or even when you, any negative feelings about yourself, we get taught like, no, change your mind, think positive, say I am worthy. And that's true. Like you do need to do that, but you do need to sit there and say, okay, why am I having these thoughts? Like, why do I feel this way? Like, don't just pass over it, because it'll just keep happening and you'll be in that cycle.
Oh yeah. Talk about positivity culture.
Yeah.
Spiritual bypassing. Yeah.
Spiritual bypassing. Because I think the negative is just as important. Like that's why I don't like the duality and all that. Like I'm starting moving away from that, where it's like it's all necessary. Like
it is.
You can't force look at someone or a situation and be like, this is negative, so I'm just going to throw positivity over it and just pretend it's not there. Like it's there for a reason. It's showing you something. So
and it won't go away unless you handle it. You have to.
Right.
Yeah, it won't. I mean, we can look at that on a macro level, and we can look at that on a personal and micro level. On the personal level, my belief is that we're not human for nothing. Like we come here to have the human experience, which means that we should feel human. And feeling human means feeling the emotions and feeling what's happening around us and absorbing our environment and absorbing, what this means to be and live a human life. It doesn't mean that you have to live in anything that feels or that is not good for you, but you do, part of the process is experiencing it and acknowledging it and then working through it. On a macro level, spiritual bypassing allows, especially in the spiritual community, like the New Age community, it allows people to not have to look at societal issues because they don't want to lower their vibration, right? So they're like, I'm just going to send you love and light. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean for, a mom who can't feed her kids? Or what does that mean for, when there's a school shooting? Or what does that mean when a person of color is marginalized, or another Black man is shot dead in the street by a cop? Like, what does that mean on those real human things? Because love and light don't mean shit if there's no action behind it.
Exactly.
So I think you can hold space for people to have hope, to bring positivity into a situation when it's time. But the immediate reaction when something big and tragic happens shouldn't be, oh, I'm just going to send you love and light. No, it should be, how do I get in there and help fix this? What can I contribute that can make this better for another human living person? And I think that spiritual bypassing allows people to disconnect even further.
Yeah.
About themselves.
We do that even when someone passes away and we're like, I'm sending your family love and light, or I'm sending your family love. We're like, I don't do that anymore. I'm like, well, how are you? Do you need anything?
Yeah.
Like, that's just like, that's not helpful.
Yeah. No, it's like, what can I do to, can I feed you? I'll feed you.
Do you need anything?
Right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, your food is amazing.
It's like, what are you cooking?
Just throwing that out there for the listeners.
So
she ever offers to feed you, say yes.
Just say yes. Oh, I love cooking for people. That's part of my healing language. I cook for people. Because I think food shows love. Now there's an unhealthy side of that too, where, you're just feeding people and making them all,
Right.
You're just feeding your whole family.
You all the chicken in the world.
Right. You gotta be healthy with it, but I do love to
right.
feed.
Yeah.
So
good.
So yeah.
This has been amazing. Like the tools and the tips that you've provided.
Right.
The journey you've been on and been open enough to share, like, absolutely incredible. Like,
so open to share. Just
Oh, thank you. But I have to hide.
Thank you for
I have to hide.
Do you feel like being more open about certain things like is helpful to you? Or were you ever at a point where you weren't open? Because I've known you to be pretty
open.
Forward,
I think there was a period I think when I was processing the hurt of that friendship, I kind of cowled back a little bit. I didn't feel as open. I didn't feel as, connected to other people as I usually do. So there are times, and believe me, there are still things in my life, my personal life, my marriage, that kind of stuff that I think is sacred and I don't share all the time. But my personal journey that has helped me to become the best person that I am, the personal work that I've done. Like, there's no shame in that, because I know we think often that we're the only one and like nobody else is experiencing this, and and we judge ourselves, and we have these self-pity parties because we think we're the only one. But we're not. Everybody is dealing. Let me tell you something. If you're dealing with it, everybody else, there are 10 people that you know right now that are dealing with it too. Maybe on a different level, maybe with a different manifestation, but they're still dealing with the same thing. And so nobody's alone in this world with anything that they're dealing with. So why hold it in and carry shame about it? Why not say, you know what, I'm going through this and it's pretty shitty. And who else is going through it? Can we support each other? Can I support you? Can you support me? Let's go get some help together.
Right.
Let's go do this. Let's go do this, this thing together. Maybe we'll both feel better, and hold each other accountable for healing whatever that issue is. Like, I have this saying that we don't heal in isolation, but in community. Like we die in isolation. We heal in community. When we build community around us that we can trust to hold space for us, and they can trust that we'll hold space for them. Like that's what it's about. We don't need to be, in isolation unless you're going through your wilderness process. And then, maybe that's what you do. Whatever. Right. I think I said this in our call, like, what is it that you need? Do what you need, but don't feel like you can only heal in isolation. Because even in my isolation, I'm still reaching out. I'm still getting the help that I need. I'm still going to things that are positive for me. But isolation would look like you're sitting in your house and you don't talk to nobody. And you have this pain in your heart that you have never shared with anybody because you think you're the only one. Mm-hmm. And you're not. I hate to break it to people, but we're not special. like you might be special, like the life that you're living, and of course you're special. I love you, right? But our problems are not special. They're not unique.
Right? They're not unique.
They're not unique. So reach out.
So real. It's important to realize that.
Mm-hmm. And you'd be surprised what friend you tell, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, girl, I thought I was the only one. I'm so glad you told me." Mm-hmm. Or there's the real possibility too that they do the opposite, right? And they shame you or they make fun of you for it. Well, guess what? Here's what's happened there is you get to realize that's not your friend. Those are not your people.
Yeah.
Right.
And you get to
exit a great realization.
Right.
Exactly. And make room for someone or something else more like supportive or
absolutely.
So even in that it's good.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a positive. And it might hurt, right? Because maybe you were close to that person.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
But no, clear the path. And set the intention. If that's what you want to do, set the intention that that's what you want to do. I want to clear the path for good people in my life. I attract healthy relationships and friendships into my life. And that's what I started telling myself. I attract these into my life. And I have. So,
did you set intentions and stuff before you went through this process? Were you as intentional as you are now?
I think I learned to be as intentional. And I think I learned the power of intention. So I think I started on this journey like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to do this. And I don't really know what that meant until I saw the power of intention. Because really what intention is, it's like, you're basically focusing where your thoughts go. You're focusing on what on the result that you want to have. And when you focus on that, that's where your energy goes. And when your energy goes there, guess what? Well, you damn well might achieve it. You just might luck up on achieving that.
Just might do it.
You just might do it. You might surprise yourself and do it.
Right.
You guys have me giggling.
I know. This has been awesome.
It really has.
For being so open to all these tidbits with us and everybody.
I appreciate it.
I know. I can't wait to sit down with my idiot self and like.
You're so funny.
Damn, just might do it, Kristen.
You damn well just might do it.
Just might get this figured out. Set some boundaries with my inner saboteur.
I'm about to set my subconscious down on this couch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're good. They're good meditation. Mm-hmm. And they're good. They have a good grounding beginning to them. So you're going to ground yourself. You're going to do some chakra work, and then you're going to go into the meditation. So enjoy. I would love to have feedback. And then when the whole course comes out, because I'm going to package it together, I'll get it to you guys for free. I'll give it to you.
Oh my God!
Oh, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Feedback.
Right.
Because we may mess it up tonight, but I'm about to get it.
Like I'm going to start the process.
You can do it as many times as you need.
So just really quickly, you said like while you were in DC, you were working at, like the root chakra and you moved here or to Houston and, started healing up through the chakra and like going deeper inside yourself and healing. I think it's really cool that like now that is literally your field and what you help people do. And it's kind of like you trusted the process, quote unquote, the process. And while you like trusted the process and stepped into your intuition while you were healing, it sets you up to like help other people heal. And like it's kind of come full circle in a way. And it's like, all right, you listened, you might have been scared, I don't know, but you did it. And now you're like literally helping people change their lives and do the same.
I know.
I think that's dope.
See, I just might have did it. No, I look at it sometimes and I'm like, wow, I actually did do this, and it was not easy. And I'm still building my business. I'm still learning. I don't think you ever stop learning.
Right.
But I did exactly what I set out to do, and I'm really proud of myself. And I'm really proud of what I'm building. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I have one more piece of my business that's launching.
Yes.
Oh, do tell.
So my hypnosis collective, I was launching it in I think three parts. So the first part was to just really get into the community, to find out what's already happening in the community, introduce myself to the community, start making those business connections. So just going, hey, I'm here. What can I do? I want to just kind of figure out where I fit, right? And I think I've done that really well. The second part of that was to launch my coaching offers and also my podcast. And my podcast is called The Healing Toolbox. And part of what I've done, I know, I'm excited. Part of what I've done in a previous life was I produced podcasts for off and on since like 2010. So I love podcasting. I have had a few shows. I've helped produce a few shows. It's one of my favorite things to do. So, so can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. My daughter called me and it rang on my computer. So one of my favorite things to do is podcasting. And so I'm launching the Healing Toolbox, which is a interview style podcast. And I'm interviewing healers of all type around the world. Any type of holistic healer that I can talk to, I want to talk to. So for example, I've done an interview with a medium who uses mediumship to help people work through grief. I've interviewed a paramedical tattoo artist who works with women to reconstruct nipples after breast cancer.
That is amazing.
Yeah. I'm really excited about that one. I am, let's see. What else do I talk to? We talk a lot about like self-love and ritual. I interviewed somebody who is going to be a reoccurring guest to talk about crystals and the science of crystals and conscious use of crystals. So like just all kinds of different people who are working in holistic healing. So that's what this podcast is. Because I believe that we don't, like I said, we don't heal in isolation, but in community, and we need to have a community of healers around us or at our access so that, because each one brings their own tool. And as individual people, we should build our own healing toolbox. And so these interviews are really designed to give people information about all the different types of healers that are out there, mind, body, spirit healers. So I'm excited about that. And that's launching next Wednesday. So it's the second and fourth Wednesday of each month. Yes. Yay.
I love that.
I know. I'm very excited.
Because like, especially like when people go through the traditional ways of healing and I'm in a group and people are constantly asking for like, can someone help me with this and heal from this? Like the traditional methods aren't helping me. And like the things that people most often throw out, like therapy or meditation and stuff. And they're like, it's just not helping me.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what else is there? And people still throw out the things that are, mainly thrown out.
Yeah.
So I think that is so crucial to like let people know that there are a ton of tools that you can use for your situation, and like just being open to seeing what else can be done, like hypnosis. Like, I mean, I'm just in shock because like I could have been through this situation, but like, like until the more you know, like remember PBS back in the day, the more you know, like literally.
Yeah.
I think that's really dope.
Yeah.
I'm
excited
love that you're not just like going through what you're going through, but you're making solutions, and not just making solutions, but implementing them and making sure that you create spaces to help other people, not just like in a space of complaining, not just in a space of where you were like with rage and anger, but like now you're like, no, these are things that you can do that actually help and actually work. And I want to provide them and like show you that they're out there. That's so dope.
Mm-hmm. And I want people to be able to think outside the box. Like, just think outside the box. There's all kinds of ways that you can work through. And I don't know, I'm excited. I've been planning this for a while. I have quite a few episodes like already planned. You and I, we're going to talk because I know that you have a tool that I would love to interview you about, and we're going to get that date together.
Oh, yeah.
And then the third part of my business, which I'm hoping to launch in 2020, is I actually want to open a healing space, which would be like a co-working space for holistic healers. Yeah. So that's the end goal.
Can you like make sure that you document that process thoroughly so that we can reproduce it in other cities? Like when I get where I'm gonna be, and then in 2020, like I open part 2 of that and like franchise it. That sounds so amazing.
It's definitely been a thought. Yeah. Yes. So if you take like a WeWork or like a Regis or something like that, right? Which is where I used to work. I used to work for Regis, which is why I know how to run a co-working space, and transfer that into the holistic healing field, where, you can have a community space for events, and then, treatment rooms. I actually rent an office in a similar space, which I love. It's called the Spectrum Center here in Houston, Texas. And there is an amazing group room that I use for group events. And then I'm able to rent office space as I need it for clients. And it is the perfect solution to me as I build my business. And so it's always been my goal to have a healing center. And so a co-working space like that is just, it's ideal. And I'm very excited about that.
I love that.
2020, come on.
I know.
Right. Lots of work to do before then, but that is amazing.
Yeah, I'm excited.
That.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are my goals. Just might mess around and get them done.
Just might do it.
Just might do it. Just might do it.
Just might do it.
You might mess around and do it, girl.
I know. Look at that. Yeah.
You're so inspiring.
Thanks. Thank you. I love what you guys are doing with this podcast too. Like, people telling their stories. I don't know that. I need to talk to you guys and have you on the show too, because there's something in the power of telling our stories that, it's just so healing. People just need to talk. People need to tell what's going on, how they overcame, like what did they do in their life to make it better. There's power in those stories. So thank you for creating this environment and this platform, to tell those stories.
Well, thank you. Yeah. That's our goal, literally.
Yeah,
that's exactly
our mission.
I know. I was like, keep going. Oh, she got it. Yes. Like we've found in these interviews that people come back to us and they're like, sometimes they'll have aha moments during the interview, and they'll come back after, and they're like, after me sharing that, I've been in like just found power from telling my story, and now I just feel more driven to do this or this. And like we find, so far we're finding more healing from the people telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
And we know as we grow and expand, like more people will run into episodes that speak to them directly. But right now, like we're finding so much healing just from people having the courage to open up and speak about what they've been through and how they overcame it. And that's exactly what we want. Exactly what we want.
You guys get all these nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Learned so much.
Stop. You know what? You guys are just really doing this for you. I understand.
No, but you know what? Like, as we talk to people and we get like all these nuggets, and I'm like, this like might be more beneficial for me. Like, I'm learning so much stuff. Like,
yeah,
I will go ahead and admit that.
It's like you do, and this is what it looks like to also do your own healing work and trust in the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah. I mean, don't think that when I am
Finally,
doing, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, don't think that when I'm in a session with somebody that whatever I'm telling them, I'm not getting too. Like, I'm not doing the releasing work, but the positive scripting, I'm getting that too. Yes, I'm confident. Yes, I can do this. Yes, right. I am love. I am loved. Like, I am perfect the way that I am. You know, I get that too. And so you guys will have your own healing from just talking to people also. And so allow yourself to get that. Yeah. Don't look over that. Not if you are. I mean, definitely see the gem that you have here.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing it too, like as I'm starting my coaching practice and working in the healing field and like working with the people I'm working with right now, like as they realize certain things, I'm like, oh, that's so good. Oh my gosh. Like, I don't say it like that because but I'm like, like when you like make a conscious effort to help other people, you literally are helping yourself.
Mm-hmm. You are. You're like,
and that's the one thing you were talking about with community, like why it's important we heal through community, because when you reach out to help other people, it's not that cliche of give what you want. I mean, it is that, but it's not for the selfish reason of, oh, I'm only giving so that like people are like, oh, give money to people because you'll get it back. But like, no, it's more than that. It's deeper than that. When you give to others, you are literally giving to yourself.
Yeah. Well, you're creating like this psychic energy chain, right? So you create it within you, the energy around you is filled with it, and it just expands. And so you're just literally like just changing the environment that you're in when you do that. It's powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So go, you guys.
And hopefully we'll have the largest directory of healing stories that has ever been created. Like, that's what we want Thank You for You to be. And like 10 years from now, like we have this wealth of information that is like healing the world over just from people who are brave enough to share their stories. And they don't even know, like in that moment, how they have helped thousands of people. Even like, 60 years from now, people are still running across their episode. And it's like, just you and that one moment of sharing yourself, being open and authentic, how it like created this chain reaction. But
I love it. I like that goal.
So thank you so much for opening up and being a part of this healing journey.
Yeah, I enjoyed this. Thank you. Thank you. I've had a wonderful time tonight. Thank you.
It was nice meeting you, Michelle.
It was nice meeting you.
Oh, I should say it's nice meeting this version of you.
Oh, I like that.
If you enjoyed this week's podcast, please help us spread this story by
subscribing however you're listening, rating this podcast, and commenting and following on our social media.
And thank you for you.